my friends. So it's Saturday, and again I've decided not to open my store, but to go shooting. And I'm not that interested in showing you how I can shoot, because you take my word for it, I can shoot. But what we're really going to do is just, have a little conversation and talk. For instance, I did join the PPC party. I quit the Liberal Party and joined the PPC party. That started about 2 months ago when Justin Trudeau told Bill Blair to go around the country and have these town hall talks about banning all our handguns and assault rifles, they call them. Basically, they want to take our heritage from us, you know. I have my grandfather's guns and my great-grandfather's guns and my father's guns, and I'm just not into losing my freedom. So, anyhow, I did join the PPC. Now, last night there was a meeting, and it was between a guy named Bannon and Frum. And there was crowds outside screaming Nazis, Nazis, and bug-eyed and just, screaming and whacking cops in the face and so on and so forth. And I looked at them and I heard what they were saying, calling people Nazis, and we don't want Nazis in this country, and Nazi that and Nazi that. And I thought that they were really anti-free speech is what I thought. And then I watched the debate between Frum and Brannon, and I think Brannon actually won the debate, and it was completely peaceful, completely harmonious. It was not like the crowd outside were saying at all. So I think that these crowds that are going around being hysterical are very unfair. They're right off the wall, and they've lost me. I'm not into their socialist, communist ideas, or being called a Nazi or a fascist or a racist or all this crap. We're actually Canadians, and we just want to have a good life and a good country, and everybody enjoy themselves, Nobody's into concentration camps and burning Jews and Nazism. This is just foolishness. There's a professor named Jordan that talks about it, and I'm starting to think that Jordan is pretty sharp. At first, he was using so many words to describe anything, I found it a bit boring, but after I listened to him for a while, Jordan's okay. Anyhow, that's what I think. Like I say, I don't have to prove that I can hit the target to you. I can hit the target. If anybody ever wanted to come to Canada and conquer us, well, there's lots of guys like me that say, no, you're not going to come to Canada and conquer us. Get it? Also, I'm really tired of being an ethnic Canadian. You can't even say that you're a Canadian anymore. I had a guy in a muffler shop repairing my muffler, and we were talking. He was a really nice guy, Central European, nice guy. And he says to me, "Where are you from?" I said, "Oh, I'm Canadian." He says, "Yeah, but where are you from?" I said, "Well, I was born in Newfoundland." He says, "Yeah, but where are you from?" And all of a sudden I realized, you're not allowed to say you're a Canadian. You have to be a Greek Canadian. You have to be a Muslim Canadian, a Christian Canadian, an Italian Canadian, a French Canadian, right? A Namibian Canadian, a Japanese Canadian. You can't just be Canadian. So this guy that was saying, well, where are you from? Where are you from? Then he says to me, "Yeah, my son's the same way. He says he's a Canadian." But I tell him, "No, you're a Greek Canadian." Well, I'll tell you something. I was in the Canadian Army. It wasn't the ethnic Canadian Army. It was the Canadian Army. It's okay to be Canadian. We don't have to be ethnic, diversified. You know what really splits people up? Religion. Religion is one of the worst things going. You know, I saw today that, you know, some Jews got shot in a synagogue by some stupid white nut last week. And there were Christians and Jews and Muslims all in this church saying, oh, we all love each other. That isn't so. Religion divides people more than anything, and then ethnic does. And of course, skin color. And if you want to be divided, you can be divided. You know, you can just choose to be divided. But if you want to be together, you can be together. What I find is a decent person is a decent person. It has nothing to do with their diversity. And an asshole is an asshole, and it has nothing to do with his diversity. Got him. Isn't that neat? Anyhow, that's what I had to say at the moment. Now, let's do some shooting and have some fun. Be back in a minute. Okay, now, so these targets are set up at 45 yards. And I noticed something, and that is that if I shoot at it, what happens is, there we go, just that sight. Anyhow, it's colder than last week. And last week I had to hold the crosshair right on the center. And this week, I have to hold it down on his feet, right at the very bottom. So because it's colder, the gun is shooting higher. But just by adjusting it a little lower, we can pick them off. So that one won't go up. At that time. Okay, so anyhow, that's what's going on. I have to hold a little bit lower today. Okay, so, you know, shooting is a great sport. I enjoy it quite a bit. There's no reason to be going around screaming at people, taking their property. Legal gun owners are not causing any problems. Yesterday at the border, they caught a 50-year-old woman who had 25 handguns hidden inside her gas tank of her car. And this is how the guns are coming in. People are smuggling them in, and for the leftists to be screaming, oh, it's legal guns. It's not. It's a small percentage of guns that are stolen, but the great majority are being brought in gas tanks like that, and being sold to these kids, 15, 16 years old, and they're going around murdering everybody. And this is causing legal gun owners a lot of trouble. Legal gun owners dislike these little black kids that are shooting each other, these little gang members. You know, they're not from our culture. They're from an island culture, and they haven't adjusted to the lifestyle of Toronto, and so they're murdering each other. But I'll tell you something. I was raised in Toronto, raised and went to school in Toronto. And I never saw one black person until I was 16 years old. Is that racist? And Canadians just loved black people. We all were taught in school, oh, you know, we had the Underground Railroad and we brought them in and we saved them from being slaves in the Civil War. Well, that's true. So when black people started coming here, Canadians were just falling all over themselves to be nice to them. The people, many of these kinds of people didn't appreciate it. Of course others do, you know, like, come on. I know lots of black folks that are great people. But that's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is these little 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20-year-old little black assholes who are murdering each other and causing the rest of the country to lose their privileges, their guns, their heritage. Canadians have given up an awful lot to bring in all these different types of immigrants. And for the main part, it's worked out very good. I certainly know plenty of immigrants because I live in Toronto, and new immigrants and first-year immigrants. Great people, like them a lot. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the small percentage that are causing a lot of harm, and then we get people like John Tory, the mayor, who's just, you know, into take their guns. I don't know why anybody needs a gun, you know. But if you ride a bicycle, that's okay. Everybody needs a bicycle. Nobody needs a gun. Right? You know, it's just nonsense what we're going through in this country. And anyhow, I'm going to vote for Maxime Bernier next time. Give somebody a chance. Because it's time for a change, boys. It's time for a change. Don't you think so? Haven't you had enough too? I've had enough. This is a beautiful country. Beautiful country, beautiful scenery, beautiful people. It's a great place. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the small percentage of dickheads that are wrecking it for everybody else. That's what we're talking about. Anyhow, I'm going to vote PPC next time because I've had enough of Justin's justice. It's not good enough for me. Anyhow, I'll be back in a minute. Canadians are amongst the most generous people in the world. They bend over backwards to be kind and decent and fair. Fairness is a big word in Canada. And so, you know, Canadians have done their very best to bring immigrants here, let them join the country. They've made a great effort. You know, the Canadian government does not treat Canadians as fairly as it could be imagined. I was a tattooist for 23 years, and I had a guy come in my store one night, and being a tattooist is like being a shaman or a priest. People confess to you. They tell you their life story. They're getting their tattoo, and they just tell you everything. Anyhow, about, I don't know, 25 years ago maybe, 30 years ago, when the people from Pakistan started coming here in large numbers, and they weren't getting jobs, people weren't hiring them enough, so the government decided to hire them. And this is what happened. A guy came into my store, and he told me his story, and this is what it was. You can make of it what you want, but this is the truth. So he said, I just got fired from the post office. I said, oh yeah. You know, oh yeah. And he said, yeah. He said, I've worked there part-time for 10 years trying to get on full-time, but they fired me today and hired a Pakistani. I said, oh yeah. He said, yeah. He said, my father was in the Second World War, and he worked at the post office after he got out of the army, and 10 years ago he got me on as part-time so that eventually I could get on full-time. And I've worked there, 3 months and 6 months, and they lay you off so that they don't have to keep you on, and then you work 6 months and they lay you off for a month, and they were doing this kind of stuff to the guy. But he was there, and he was loyal, and he wanted to get on at the post office the way his father had wanted him to. And anyhow, after 10 years of service, because some Pakistanis were not getting enough jobs, the government just said, "You're gone." The Pakistani gets the job. Now, listen, is that fair? Is that fair to the Canadian who did his 10 years and his father served in the army? Anyhow, it was just a story I heard one night, but this is the way our government is. They favor the new people, and rightly so, like, it's good to get new people started in the right direction and help them out to get started. However, we know that there's many people who are coming here and they're staying on social assistance because it's better or even more money than some of the jobs that they get. Because I'll tell you something, most jobs in Canada are horrible. They're terrible jobs. You're taxed to death when you do get paid, and you're working for guys that will lay you off in a second or take advantage of you, or there's a pecking order at work where they're just pick, and there's lots of prejudice at work too, talking behind your back and stuff. These jobs that we have just put us into the rat race, and all as we are is part of the gross national product. We're not worth a toot. And you can put your 10 years in. You're gone if you want to take your job. So that's my kind of thinking on it. We want some fairness in this country. Don't you think? Hey, what do you think? Wouldn't it be nice to have some fairness? Knock 'em dead. Yeah, so there's a whole bunch of things that are going on in this country that are not quite copacetic. And there's a lot of people getting fed up with it. And right now we've got a Minister of Immigration who is saying, "Oh, we want to bring in up to 450,000 people so that we can tax them, and then you old guys will get your pension." So everybody's, "Oh, I want my pension, bring in these people." Well, in 20 years, are we going to bring in 1 million people to pay the pensions for the 450,000 we're bringing in now? It's false economy. It's nonsense. You can't just keep bringing in immigrants. Immigrants is not the answer for every problem in Canada. The people want to have a little less immigration. They're not saying no immigrants. It's the Canadian people that are being kind to them. The Canadian people don't hate immigrants. What they hate is, or that's maybe a wrong word, but what they really don't like is losing their jobs and becoming second-class citizens and being taken advantage of. Anyhow, I'm going to vote for Max in the next election because I think it's time for a change. That's all. I just want to change. Good for me. Okay? Anyhow, I'm going to get off the blower now and continue on having some fun, and I'll talk to you later. Bye now. Okay, now, we got our target set up down here at 110 yards. And again, today, I have to aim slightly lower because it's colder. Definitely have a creepy trigger on this gun. first you have to take up the slack. And then it'll break. Okay, so that's how we clean it. Okay. Well, folks, so I guess we're, I'm getting bored with this shooting now, so we'll just talk for a minute. This country, it's a wonderful place. All kinds of people live here. And we all get along very well. I live in downtown Toronto, and I shop at a Chinese grocery store. T&T it's called. Great food. They don't hire any white people. Only Chinese people work there. Is that racism? Anyhow, it's a great store. I really like shopping there. The people are nice, and that's great. When I go out and get my car fixed now, I used to go to Mike's Garage. I went there for about 40 years, and Mike now has sold it, and it's now called the Hajib, I think it's Hajib or Habab Garage. And the guys are Ethiopians. The little mechanic there, he can't even speak English hardly at all. And he looks like Haile Selassie, so he's an Ethiopian. Anyhow, the guy is really sharp. He just comes over and checks the car and fixes it. He's fixed my brakes. He's fixed my horn, done a tune-up, replaced the brake lines and stuff like that. So there's nothing wrong with immigrants. They're good folks. Unfortunately, we get a small percentage of them that go and rape a Chinese girl or commit a murder, or they won't work, they go on welfare. It gives them a bad reputation too. One thing you have to realize is that these immigrants aren't all the same. They're from all around the world, which is cool. In that sense, diversity is doing us some good, like we get a lot of different kinds of sandwiches and stuff like that. So that's cool. But when Canadians are being taken advantage of by their own government and treated like they're, second-class citizens, people that don't really count, it just doesn't seem right. And also, I'll tell you something. I have I'm a multimillionaire. I own 3 businesses, It's true. I'm not a real goof when it comes to capitalism and making money. And I have a very simple way of looking at the economy, and that is, I call it the pie theory. And that is, you have one guy, one pie, you get the whole pie. One pie, 2 guys, you get half a pie. One pie, 10 guys, a tenth of a pie. One pie and 40 million people, you get less. If you have 50 million people, you get less. What the increase in population does for the economists, and it's the economists that are running our country, not even the politicians, it's these economists, and they come up with these financial plans to make money. More people, more taxes, more consumption, more jobs, right? Well, that's all true until you get to the breaking point when it all collapses because you're all poor. When we see all these people riding their bicycles now, well, when I was a kid, you only saw people like that in India riding bicycles. Adults didn't ride bicycles. We're getting poorer, People can't afford to buy a house anymore. They're all in debt. And then the taxes go up, and it just murders them. There has to be a better way. There has to be a better way than just saying immigration is the answer for everything. You want your old age pension, more immigration. It's nonsense, folks. Now it's time for a change, and that's what I'm saying. It's time for a change, and I believe that I want real change. I'm going to go for Maxime Bernier, the PPC party. Give them a chance. They're only speaking about freedom, and isn't that good enough? Freedom for the individual, respect for the individual, fairness for the individual. I like it. Anyhow, that's what I had to say today, and we'll see if they even allow this. Anyhow, you guys have some fun. Talk to you later. Bye now.